The Iroquois languages stretch from the southeastern US all the way to southern Canada. With only around 6,380 native speakers in total, the languages aren't doing great, but it's actually getting better. The number of native speakers may increase for the first time in the last 300 to 400 years. This is because people are actually teaching their children the Iroquois language as a first language. To start, I've actually been calling them the Iroquois, which is not actually right. It should be pronounced Iroquois because it's a French transcription of the Algonquin word for rattlesnake or black snake, which is used to describe their rivals, the Iroquois. The Iroquois themselves call themselves the Haudenosaunee, which means the people of the longhouse, because, well, they lived in longhouses. All the different Iroquois languages descended from one specific language called Proto-Iroquois. We don't really know where the borders of this was because there's no written records, but this is a rough area. No one really knows the exact origin of the Iroquois people and language, but it can be guessed that the proto-speakers came from the northwest over in Alaska and migrated down along with all other Native Americans. There are two main branches within the Iroquois languages. There's a southern branch that only includes Cherokee, and there's a northern branch with a bunch of different languages. The northern Iroquois languages consisted of the Iroquois proper, which were the 5 original nations of the Iroquois Confederacy. These include Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Susquehannock, Mohawk, and Oneida. Next to the Huronian language branch, which includes Huron-Wyandot and Petun, which are both extinct. The next branch is Tuscarora-Nottoway, which includes Tuscarora, Meherrin, and Nottoway. Nottoway is the only surviving language of this branch. Finally, there are 4 unclassified languages that died out long ago, way before anyone was able to record them extensively. These languages are Wenro-Ronin, Neutral, Erie, and Laurentian. Interestingly, Lake Erie is actually named after the Erie language, of which only one speaker was ever known. The Iroquois languages are highly polysynthetic. Polysynthesis is where you take a root word and you add a bunch of suffixes and prefixes to add meaning. Of course, it's more complicated than that, and I'm going to do a video on it next week, but that's the most fundamental idea of polysynthesis. Take this Mohawk word, for example, Ensagua Nents Aronco, which means we will take the corn back off the cob. This example takes the verb root ron and adds prefixes and suffixes that change and add meaning to create a word sentence. It's one word because you couldn't separate any of the parts. If you tried, it would effectively make the sentence nonsense. Here's a few words from the languages compared. While these may look very different on the surface, they're actually pretty similar. Note that all the letter K's are actually pronounced as G in most of these languages, although this sometimes does change. Some interesting features about the Iroquois language is that they actually have 2 words to say we. One is we as in the speaker and everyone else, and the other is the speaker and just their friends, not the listener. They also have 3 different forms of you. They have a you singular, a you plural, and they have a you that includes the speaker and one other person. On top of all that, they also have another pronoun system that changes depending on if you can lose what you're talking about or if you can't lose what you're talking about. So for instance, if you're talking about your brother, you change it because you couldn't lose your brother. But then if it's something you could lose, like a book, it'd be like your book. And it would have a different ending because you could lose the book. Overall, the Iroquois languages are an incredibly fascinating language family that has managed to survive this long and potentially may be growing as many native families are choosing to teach their children Iroquois as their first language and are teaching it in schools. Its complex grammar may hurt this, but it's just one more thing that makes this language so incredibly unique. Thanks for watching this far. If you enjoyed, consider liking or subscribing. And finally, have a good day.